I am Praseeja Nambiar from Stonehill International School, Bangalore. Along with me, I have Mr. Samir from Legacy School and Ms. Ramya from Manthan International, Hyderabad. Today we are here to present our comprehensive, sort of a package about Indian curriculums. And we have tried our best to put all in together, not too overwhelming, yet something that you all will have some takeaways back to your admissions office. So before I begin, I just want to have a show of hands. How many of us are university delegates? All right, that's amazing. Thank you all for the time that you've taken out for this session. We hope you serve the best. And how many high school delegates? Okay, couple of us. Thank you so much again. We request the high school administrators to pull in any information that you have and we have missed it. Please feel free to come up with suggestions so that we can help our university counterparts to make better decisions. So I would like to start off with giving an overview of what the Indian education sector looks like. We as a country are one of the most complex in terms of the education curriculums that we offer, precisely because of 1.6 million schools that we run across the country, and this is just the K-12 I'm talking about. I'm not talking about universities or vocational schools or preschools. This is just the K-12 sector, close to 1.6 million schools, catering to almost 23 million students. And to serve those 23 million students, we have only 5.5 million teachers. So you know the teacher-student ratio. It's not the greatest of data that we have, but I think we're doing really good. The education sector in India basically stems from what was left behind after independence in 1947 by the British. Those days, education was only elite. Before independence, it was only elite and only for select group of people and students. But now, after the NEC, the National Education Commission's inception, the Indian education sector has been really scaling up in order to provide education to every citizen of this country, to every child of this country, and to make education as accessible as possible. And that's the very essence of Indian curriculum, why there are so many curriculums that are around. Now, just going down to what the population looks like, who are the people who get educated in these curriculums? I'm talking about 0.44 billion children in this age group, which is one of the highest index caps in the world. So we have a very, very high population in this age group, which is a very young population. The youth, the index of youth is really, really high there. And if I have to attribute the growth of Indian education sector in the last 10 years is predominantly because of the income of the middle class salaried sector of families in India have gone up, and almost 35 to 40% of the income of a salaried family is spent on education. So from a cultural standpoint, they feel education is very important, and they will go to they try and do as much as possible to ensure that education is provided to their children, and hence statistically 35 to 40% of the income of a salaried person is spent on their family's education. The government identifies that, and hence the union budget allocation has also been 500 billion for the last fiscal year. So that is another great achievement to reckon with from a counselor, from a school standpoint, where I see the Indian education sector really growing fast, almost fourfold than what it was last 10 years ago. Next slide. Okay. All right, so what are the aims of national education policy? So this is a framework by the government of India. They decided that there has to be some common objectives why the education in India, because it's widespread, because there's so many territories, there's so many smaller regions, and if it has to be catered, a structure, a framework was very important for the government to come up with, and this is what they came up with. Basically, the aims are to connect students to outside world, to ensure that they have opportunities outside school as well, to ensure that learning shifts away from rote methods, just remembering. today's education system, if you see, all the curriculums offer much more than just memorizing redundant concepts, but it's moved, there has been a paradigm shift towards using skill-based learning, problem solving. So all of these skills have been inculcated into the curriculum, and which is great to see these days. Enriching the curriculum. So again, the textbooks and the curriculum is revised frequently. Concepts that are redundant are removed so that the students are updated with what the world needs now, and futuristic and new subjects are added. So a lot of changes and reforms that are taking place in the education sector. Making examinations more flexible and integrating. Again, until, if in my future slides, you will come to know what kind of examinations they are, what kind of levels do they offer. All of that will be covered in the next few slides. But yes, examinations are more flexible. Private candidates versus, school registered candidates. So all of that is available in India. And also, an overarching theme of the NEC is also about, to identify, to celebrate the democracy of the country, to celebrate the diversity of the country. So curriculums do have glimpses of culture, glimpses of Indian politics, Indian history. A lot of that is a part of, embedded very deeply into the curriculums that you will see. To understand the structure very simply, if you look at it, there are two ways of going forward. That's formal education and informal education. The formal education, so I will be focusing more on the formal education because those are the students who tend to go abroad or stay in India for a formal undergrad degree. So we will be focusing more on that area. Yet a little bit of vocational education will also come into picture in the later slides. But formal education looks predominantly the K-12 and the colleges, universities. Here we will be focusing on the K-12 organizations, which is very pertinent to what we are here for. Again, if I have to dive deep into the K-12 exam boards, now because of so many curriculums being offered in the country, we have just simplified this into the structure. So we have 4 major boards that are offering examinations to the students: CBSE, ICSE, NIOS. Universities, please watch out for NIOS. It's the next big thing. So we will be covering that in detail, and state boards. So every state has their own, curriculum system, and students who study in their local public schools in the state may be following the state boards. And then coming to the secondary school structure. Secondary school structure is very similar to the US high school, that we would say the 9 and 10 is called as a lower secondary, and the 10 and 11 and 12 is the higher secondary. So we will be focusing both 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 because most of our universities want to see how the students have performed across the 4 years of high school. So we'll tell you exactly, and also after grade 10, in students following the Indian curriculums have an examination, and that the school leaving examinations, and that becomes an important determining factor for them to go ahead into grade 11. So we will be covering that as well. So looking at exams and boards again, we're focusing on 3 national boards here: CBSE, the ICSE, and the National Institute of Open Schooling. So CBSE is nothing but Central Board of Secondary Education. A government body, a body that runs major examinations, entrance examinations in the country. And I will leave it to Ramya to cover CBSE in greater detail.
So I think CBSE is probably something that most of you are familiar with. Am I right? Show of hands, everybody who has heard of CBSE. So good, I'll just skip my slides and then move on to the next. But I'm going to give you just a quick overview, and these are more really for your reference. So CBSE it's not as big as the state boards, but it is definitely pretty big. There are 21,000 odd schools that offer CBSE, and about 200 odd schools in 25 foreign countries. A quick pop quiz: outside of India, does anybody know which country has the largest number of CBSE schools? Dubai, UAE, that's right. And they have 87 schools, which is, for a country that size, pretty impressive and pretty big. A total of about 3 million students sat the board exams. Roughly 1.2 million sat the 12th board exams in 2019, and 1.7 sat the 10th board exams. So this is an abbreviated version of the CBSE's vision statement. So the focus is really on these underlined parts, which is robust, vibrant, and holistic education. And they really do try to implement that through their through their syllabus, through the marking schemes, through the kind of choices they offer and things like that, and to promote intellectual, social, and cultural vivacity. And this is something that Praseeja touched upon too. This, there's a course later on that will just sort of show, which is general studies, which is to do with, it covers sort of science and technology in our lives, environmental protection, your political identity, what it is to be, an Indian, to be in a democratic society, and things like that. So it's generally, considered to be a holistic philosophy. So these are some of the features and advantages. Like I said, attention to holistic development. And primarily, we feel that they do that through the scholastic and co-scholastic offerings. So we'll see that in a later slide, but they offer a number of scholastic subject choices which are spread out between academic electives and skills-based electives, and also co-scholastic areas like health and physical education, general studies, and also work experience, which is subsumed in the health and physical education. They have an up-to-date syllabus, like I said, offering lots of subject choices. Comprehensive evaluation criteria, I'll just show you a quick sample of the detailed marking schemes that they provide and how it's split up between the analytical component, the application component, in some cases a little bit of the recall component, but very little. So it's very comprehensive that way. And then the last part is, it's a rigorous curriculum. There is this, even among Indians, I studied ISE and CBSE, and there was this notion many years ago that, it's rote learning. And today also I would just caution you, because when we were doing this presentation, we came across articles by a number of, websites, blogs, and almost everywhere, I didn't use any of that precisely because Praseeja said, why don't we use this? And I said, everywhere CBSE is written as rote. And I really, having done this research now and being in a CBSE school, we really disagree with that. I think it is a really unfair characterization of that syllabus. And I think much of it is sort of a hangover from 15 years ago or 20 years ago, when maybe that was the case, but it isn't so now. Sorry, I'm having some issues here. Okay. Continuing with that, so one of the big advantages is that it is a standardized curriculum. So they have, I think back in the first slide, I'll just go back for a second there. So if you look at that pie chart, there are these KVs or Kendriya Vidyalayas, which are primarily these government-run schools for children of government, public sector employees. So there's a consistency. They tend to get transferred every few years. And so no matter where in the country you end up getting transferred, your children are studying the same. There's continuity in their education. And then the JNVs, which is Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas, which is for gifted and talented students specifically from rural sectors. And there's a huge chunk of independent schools as well. So this goes back to that, sorry, there was somewhere here where I also had the inclusion piece. So, it is a very inclusive curriculum, and they even mandate things like counseling, compulsory, having a counselor in every school to help with the mental well-being of students and things like that. The syllabus is a pretty high-scoring board, and we'll go through the marking schemes later. And the syllabus is pretty well aligned with the Indian competitive exams. The JEE is the competitive exam for Indian engineering colleges, and the NEET is the standardized competitive exam for entrance into Indian medical universities, medical schools. And the skill learning through job-oriented and job-linked inputs, and this again goes back to some extent to all the skills-based academics electives that are offered as well. This is again, like Praseeja said, it's based on the National Curriculum Framework. And I think some of this is a repeat, so I'll just skip it. And the format as well, she alluded to before, except in CBSE, they call it secondary and senior secondary rather than lower secondary and higher secondary. Okay, so the other misconception that a lot of people have is that CBSE has dedicated streams. There's the science stream, commerce stream, the MEC stream and things like that. But actually, if you look at the curriculum itself, it is very, very, very flexible, and they have an incredible number of subject selections. So, so you can see, subject one is pretty much, sorry? Oh, sorry, okay. We will share all this. I think generally all the IC3 slides are shared, so I'm going to move.
All IC3 sessions are video recorded
Yes.
put up online for your access, so just be something.
Yes. So even though, as you can see, there are 3 mandatory subject groupings and an optional one, but if you see all those crisscrossed lines in the middle, you can see really how flexible the curriculum is. You do have to take one of the 2 languages. And this is, by the way, for 11th and 12th, which is an integrated curriculum. So the subject choices are made at the beginning of 11th grade, and you stick with them till your board exams. And recently they made it more difficult to switch. There was, until last year, the ability to maybe switch subjects halfway through, but they've dropped that now. So you do have to stick with, I mean, in rare cases, they'll make an exception, but there's a whole process for that. So as you can see, 30 academic electives, which is your typical academic subjects, math, science, humanities. But there's also the language group, which has 31 languages, which includes all the major Indian regional languages, as well as French, German, Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, and Russian. And 42 skill-related subjects. So you have there, I don't know if you can see, but retail, auto, healthcare, beauty, nutrition, fashion, yoga, and it's a whole exhaustive list of subjects. And there is a co-scholastic component here on the right side, which is health and physical education. And that includes things like your indigenous sports, the very Indian sports, kho-kho and kabaddi and things like that, but also general physical education and general studies, which I alluded to before, which is supposed to be this kind of holistic subject, which really makes you think about a lot of different aspects of what it is to be a citizen of this country, a citizen of the world, and generally a well-rounded human being. So the role that science and technology plays in our lives, how do we preserve our environment, how do we appreciate the struggles of our freedom fighters. So it really is very overarching. And then the medium of instruction in schools can be either English or Hindi. And in terms of the pass percentage, 33% is the passing percentage. This is the marking scheme. So like I said, it covers 11th and 12th. And what the nice thing, and this is also a fairly recent innovation, is that in addition to the percentage marks, they have introduced positional grading. So the grades, it's on a 9-point scale from A1 to E. So as you can see, they take the entire range of people who have taken the exam and divide them into 1/8, whatever that's called, octile, and then the positional grade is assigned accordingly. So not only do you, and this takes care to some extent of, you hear a lot about how it's so easy to score a 95% or a 90% in CBSE relative to international boards, but having this positional grading also tells you within that cohort of exam takers, where exactly is the student, in a positional basis. These are just some board exam statistics. Like I said, 1.2 million candidates appeared for the board exams, about 83% passed, and for places like KVs and NVs, that percentage is significantly higher, something like 99.5% pass rate. And then, so you can see, 8% scored above 90%, and 1.5% of students scored above 95%. So I guess it's not that easy to score above 90% as well as people think, because especially you speak to some international school, administrators, counselors, there is this tendency to feel that it's kind of easy to score that, but actually if you look at the percentages, it's not that easy either. This was, I'm so sorry, I'm pretty sure you can't see anything, but I wanted to show you this because, so on the left I have stuff for the marking scheme for math, and this is for biology. And you can see for biology, for example, remembering is only about 10%. So the questions are, that focus on recall of facts and concepts, that's just 10%. And the remaining is pretty much comprehension, application, evaluation, and analysis. So it is a pretty rigorous curriculum, in terms of the focus is on applicability. And now the one recent change that came out, I think just 2 weeks ago, was that they have increased the number of multiple choice questions as opposed to descriptive questions as well, because and the idea is to give students more questions that focus on application of the knowledge that they have acquired, rather than just, recalling things and writing it in a descriptive way. So there's definitely a focus. They're trying. This is one other example of how there are constant innovations and changes to this curriculum. And these are some sample transcripts, and I actually couldn't find anything later than this, but you can see they do have the percentage marks as well as the positional grade in there. And I'm sure you guys have seen a lot more CBSE transcripts than I have put up here. So that's it. And if we have questions, we'll just go through all of this, and then we'll open it up to questions, because at the end we have a couple of slides where we have tried, please bear with us, we've tried to do an apples and oranges comparison. These are old. I couldn't really, so to be...
So honestly, to see the student marks, you can put it on.
Exactly.
It's not something we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So what was an open source, we used that open source.
Yes. Yes, please do, and we will, we'll update our, we'll have to cross out the student's name and things like that, though, for privacy. Oh, okay. So I'll hand it over to Praseeja to take us through CISCI and ICSE.
So this is another major board in India, while CBSE is among one popular boards because the curriculum really caters to majority of the entrance examinations in the country. This is another board that is also very, very popular. However, the number of schools that offers ICSE are comparatively lesser, as you can see. It was established in 1958. Just like the CBSE, ICSE is also expanding and going places, trying and opening in other countries, which is a good thing. This 60 subjects were offered in ICSE for 2019 examinations, and 49 subjects were offered in ISE. So people who are confused, ICSE is grade 10 and ISE is grade 12. Okay, so at grade 10 level, there were 60 subjects that were offered across the country for students to take, and 49 subjects were offered across the country for grade 12 students to appear for the examinations. So if I have to break down the examination structure, this is how it looks like. ICSE, as I said, is equivalent to grade 10. ISE is equivalent to grade 12 or 10 plus 2 equivalent. And CVE, that is a certificate for vocational education. Now this is like a parallel entry for undergraduation. Students who do not do grade like ISE here, they do CV, they take vocational training, vocational courses, and then get a degree for those skills. It can be carpentry, it can be electrician, it can be technician. So those are a lot of other skills. IT, a lot of vocations are coming up. So this is a very, very nuanced way of looking at education as a whole, because it just does not focus on your academics and extracurriculars, but really, really focuses on skill building. For students who take these kind of CVE courses, one hiccup, they cannot progress to a master's program directly in any other country. So it's like a 2 or 3 year course, which adds on to the student's degree after 12, and they can move to second year of any undergrad program. So that's the difference. So it's very skill based. The students who take CVE, slowly we see the numbers rising, but yet we do not have concrete data to do a statistical analysis, because majority of them focus on getting an ISC and getting into a formal undergrad degree. Why CICSE? Why do they? What are the salient features? Now it's something that while CBSE focuses a lot on math and science, as we can see, not because blogs or articles talk, but it's also because of the data that is presented about the number of students and the subjects that were taken. It's a student's choice what they wish to choose, but the curriculum is spanned in such a way. But ICSE predominantly has a lot more to offer in terms of humanities, management, liberal arts. So somebody who wants to study liberal arts will be a good candidate from an ISC background, would be a very good candidate for a liberal art, because they do those kind of subjects in grade 10, after grade 10. Also, a lot more focus is on language and literature, a little more focus than what the CBSE offers. Hence, those students tend to perform really well in the English proficiency examinations. So those universities are looking at English proficiency examination as one of the aspects of the application. Again, ISC, the students tend to perform better there. The only thing is, while CBSE allows private candidates to appear for the examination, ICSE and ISE, the student needs to be registered with a school to be able to appear for the examination. So those are basic differences and why one would go for ICSE. Now this is UCAS noting on examinations. The National Admissions and Accreditation has mentioned that ISE is at par with the University of Scotland, for the high school qualification there. So, which is a great boon for a lot of IC students applying to the UK when they're really confused about the equivalencies in the UK, which we'll get into in the later slides. But this is a great way to understand for UK universities in special. Now, these are the subject options, what one chooses in grade 10, which is ICSE. Now, group 1 is a compulsory component. They have to choose one of the languages, English as a language, foreign language, and history, civics, and geography, which is very much like a social sciences. And group 2, any two of the subjects, they can choose out of this. And group 3, there are many more subjects, but which I could not list out. It's available on the ICSE website. So any one of those electives. So that, brings together the whole profile of the subjects that they choose at grade 10. This is how a transcript of ICSE would look like. If you can see here, it says English, Kannada. That means English is the first language. Foreign language or the local language, the student has taken Kannada. History, civics, geography. Math and science, the group 2 one, the student has chosen 2. And home science as one of the electives. Now, you must be wondering, what is this grade 2, 1, and 2? The marks are mapped into grade points. And the grade point will look something like this. So grade 1 and 2 are being very good, and grade 9, 8 and 9, we don't want to see them on the transcripts, but we try and help our students to, move up the scale as much as possible. So while there is a mark sheet which tells exactly what marks the student has got, there is a certificate which also maps those marks into these grade points. So that's how the student, so in this case, the student has 2s and 1s, which means the student is on a higher achiever, side. I'll move ahead to, no problem. With the ISE subject option, which is grade 12, students have to choose compulsory language English, and these are the plethora of electives that the student can choose. Now the student can choose up to 5 more electives on this, and you see the range of subjects that they're offering, from computer science to mechanical drawing to commerce, accounts, economics, psychology, sociology. So the students is really coming with a very, very well-rounded profile based on what the child wants to pursue in college or university. So they have the freedom to kind of choose those subjects and, add those subjects onto their profile. This is what an ISE transcript would look like. If you see again the subject comment, this is just an example. Now what the student has chosen computer science, physical education, and physics, chemistry, math. So this is a typical application that would go for an engineering or a technical, course. But yes, if you're looking at a US university, we're more flexible on, the student even going to a liberal art course. So ICSE does allow that flexibility for students to apply to different courses regardless of the subject combination, because it is rigorous. I mean, unlike, as Ramya rightly pointed out, there are a lot of myths that CBSE is easy and ICSE is easy. It's not easy per se. The question paper pattern is different. The skills assessed are different. So I would not say it's easy. It is definitely a lot of work that goes into getting a 90 percentile and 90 percentage and above. So we will move on to understanding what the state boards have to offer, with so many states in India. I think, Samir, you can talk about it.
I think my job is the toughest. My slides are very bland. One of the reasons for that fact is that state boards, there are 52 state boards in India. So when I sat down to comprehensive evaluate, within the state, I found disparity with within one state, one region having a very strong state board system, while the other region was not as robust as it looked. So basically, in India, the whole education system is in the state as well as concurrent list. Concurrent is the central list. That means the school setup is by the national board, the curriculum setup can be by national board, and curriculum setup can also be by state. So it's the center's prerogative to set up curriculum as well as state's prerogative to set up curriculum. So that's why you have NCERT, National Council of Education, Research and Training, And you have SCERT, which is at the state level, Center for Council of Education, Research and Training. I've mentioned already 52 state boards in India. Almost 13 million students take the state board exams every year. Majority of Indian schools are affiliated with state boards, though, however, large the number of CBSE and ICSE look like, but state boards outnumber both those boards in terms of number of schools. Uttar Pradesh has the highest number of state boards and the oldest state board also in India. The other state board in India are Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, and Maharashtra, which are very, very large in magnitude. These could be offered by 3 different types of schools. They could be government schools, which are run by the state governments. The education is literally free. It's probably a few cents per month. Probably $1 a month is probably less than $1 a month is the fee, different based on the region. They could be private state board schools, which get government aid, and there could be private state board schools, which are unaided. So there are 3 different levels of schools in state board affiliation as well. It's one of the most economical board in terms of fee structure. The fee is literally negligible. The whole idea is when the education became one of the important areas to develop in, so the fee is highly subsidized to make sure that we are inclusive in way we offer education to our country. Regional and vernacular language, both languages are emphasized. There's a whole lot of difference we can talk about in person. Of course, in grade 11th and 12th, a lot of students do grade 10th ICSE and grade 10 CBSE. But for state colleges, which are engineering, medicine, there are reserved seats for the state domiciles. So a lot of students do up to grade 10th in ISC and ICSE and CBSE. In grade 11th and 12th, they move to state board. I'm from Bangalore, Karnataka region, so we see a lot of students from good schools, CBSE schools, move into the government schools or state board schools because, one, those schools are not very rigid about attendance. While in our case, we need about 90% of the attendance. So students typically go to the coaching classes to train for writing national comparative examination. And the second backup for these kids is that since they belong to the state and they studied in state board, they have a domicile quota. That means the engineering college in the state of Karnataka would reserve, say, 40% seat hypothetically for the students of Karnataka who write state board examination. So it becomes an advantage for them. I'm sorry, our computer is acting up. A portion of the curriculum focuses specifically on imparted knowledge about the state. While the national curriculum talks about the whole country and international relations also, the state board focus is very, very, very state-based. These subject choices are very conventional in terms of language. We have a 3-language formula where we understand mostly private schools offer English as first language. The second language is a state language or Hindi, which is a national language. And the third language, a child has to study for 4-5 years. Typically, what schools do, English as a first language. Then if I'm in state of Karnataka, I can make either Kannada as a second language or Hindi as a second language. However, in state board schools, mostly the curriculum is, particularly the government schools, is offered in the state language. While the private unaided schools might offer in English, the others offer in state language. So why I'm sharing this information with all of you is the language proficiency becomes something you need to watch out for if a student is applying from state board. Potential aspirants of civil services examinations also take up state boards because it's the only state board. It's compulsory to have studied, if you're writing state civils examination, again compulsory to have studied your vernacular language or the state language up till grade 12th. So if they're aspiring to write state civil services examination or central services examination, they study one state language till grade 12th, which probably many CBSE and ISC schools don't offer. Students also preparing for comparative exams, which is NEET, which is medical entrance examination, and JEE, which is basically joint entrance examination for engineering. Students enroll in schools, don't go to schools, they go to private coaching centers, and the government schools and private unaided schools give them exception from attending schools. So these are the students, not necessarily they are in the lower bell curve of economic strata. They are the ones who are using the advantage of not being able to go to school and preparing somewhere else. Students looking for taking up state-level comparative examinations, again, I've talked about it, that if they're writing state board examination, they get an advantage as a domicile to seek admission in a state engineering or medical college. So students also use that. So what should a university watch out for? I think most of these students, I would say about 90% of the students who are writing state board examination are looking for financial aid. So if you reach out to schools, which is a large number, it's a great talent pool, which has a high drive to succeed, they're looking for financial aid. Second is English language proficiency. I think it's important and pertinent for you folks to remember that students should write TOEFL or IELTS. Even in another case, CBSE and ICSE or IGCSE or IB, you exempt that. In this case, you should take a language proficiency test compulsorily. The students have very limited exposure. They're probably, as I said, they're in a different economic, socioeconomic strata. They may not have traveled overseas. So there could be some orientation in terms of what kind of challenges they face when they go overseas to study, something you need to kind of orient them when you meet them. The curriculum rigor, I would not like to make a generalized statement that I put it on the slide. We were discussing it. It's moderate to low 90% of the time. But within a state, if you go from one government school to another government school, you will see starking difference. Sometimes the state governments have very high rigorous curriculum. We were thinking Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat board, they have very, very high rigor curriculum in state board. While I come from Punjab, I belong to Punjab, so I know Punjab State Education Board, the state of education board is not that great. So the standard of education board is not that great. So you would have to do some research on which state boards are good. I've summed up one slide for you though. There is a great talent pool who's looking for opportunities. As Praseeja mentioned, we're the youngest nation in the world. We have highest population in the world in the age group of 3 to 24. So these are the children you should be looking out in terms of talent pool, but they will be looking for financial aid. These are some top state boards in schools in India. My sources are mentioned there. I've picked up 2 websites and I did a little research. These are the schools probably, if you are here when we're talking about inclusiveness and diversity, these are the state boards probably you can make an appointment and go and visit and see them in action. They would be more progressive, open to receive you, and also these are the state board schools who are doing exceptionally well. This is in the state of Karnataka. I was very surprised when I did research that Bangalore has such great state board schools. These are the state board schools, the top 3 state board schools, which are typically private state board schools, and they are not government state board schools, but they're doing a phenomenal job. This is in Maharashtra. Here in Bombay, so it's about 3-4 schools of Bombay are mentioned here. Telangana State Board is also very strong in its curriculum, so you may be wanting to watch out. And if you, Ramaya is from Hyderabad to Telangana, and we both are from Karnataka. If you ever want to reach out to a school, a state board school, you can reach out to us. We'll be happy to make an introduction and set up an appointment. Uttar Pradesh is, as I told, one of the oldest board in the country, little infected with corruption. This is Tamil Nadu. A lot of good schools in Chennai. Excellent. And again, a lot of these kids are not generally from a different socioeconomic background, but these are the children who have a drive and they're aspiring to write JEE examinations. That's their first choice. And I've mentioned one, West Bengal, St. Xavier's Collegiate School. They also have an ICSE and ISC school, St. Xavier's. After that, this is an interesting board. It's National Institute of Open Schooling. It's an open school board which has been set up to increase the literacy rate in India. The whole idea was not only the children who are marginalized, who did not get an access, in the previous years under RT, right to education, to go to school compulsorily, how do they continue their education? So that's the idea of National Institute of Open Schooling. It's by the Union government, established in 1989. It provides a number of vocational, life enrichment, and community-oriented courses. So the focus of National Open School is not just curriculum-based or subject-oriented. They're also offering, they have something called academic institutes wherein vocational trainings are taught. So you have vocational, life enrichment, and community-oriented courses. There are about 3,827 centers, 1,830 vocational centers, and 690 accredited agencies. About 1.3 million students enrolled. I'll talk about what makes this composition also. They've also reached out to other schools, which includes UAE, Nepal, Kuwait, Qatar, Muscat, and Kingdom of Bahrain. It's the largest open schooling system in the world. 1.3 million students. They've also started something very interesting called on-demand examination. Every month, a set of subjects, examinations are held. Children can choose to write their exam at their own pace. I can write an exam every month. So that kind of flexibility they brought in for the students. It's highly learner-friendly. And there is no obligation for them to stay in classroom or come and attend weekend classes. The weekend classes are conducted at the centers, but it's not compulsory for students to attend those classes. It helps though. The examinations are built in a way that it focuses on students' interests. You can have different combinations. There are 5 subject groups. They study one language compulsorily and the other different groups. In grade 12th, options are provided in commerce, science, and humanities, divided into 5 groups, and they have to pick up one subject from each group. And here, while in ICSE, ISE and CBSE, English is compulsory, they don't make English compulsory. So I may choose Kannada or Odia or, for example, Gujarati as my first language as well. The board also offers vocational training. Students can take up to 5 years to complete their examinations. Hold on, I think there is some interesting information after this. They've also tied up with now states to start open schools. And already 8 states, in association with national open school system, they've started state open schools. Just a brief piece of information for all of you. Who joins NIOS? This was very interesting when I was studying it. Students who would like to study in self-paced environment. A lot of students who like to pursue sports, they do not get exemptions from schools in terms of attendance. They like going to national open schools because they can write examination at their own pace, and they can pursue the sport professionally. So there can be great talent in terms of sports and performing arts who are doing national open school, but also training in a music school or training in a sports academy. Homeschool children. There is a new term which I got to know about a year back when I met a friend after 4 years, and she said, I'm unschooling my children. So that was very interesting. So the whole idea is children do not study any subject. She has 3 kids, 2 dogs, and 1 cat, and all of them are unschooled. None of them go to school. And there are many, many, many more children like that. And this year, as I read out to you a small piece when she sent me an information, one of her friends wrote to her, her friend's daughter, Malvika Joshi, topped many Olympiads in programming and got into MIT. She did not write any standardized tests or national examination. My son scored well in IGCSE without any previous academic study, tests, or exams. Scored pretty well in SATs and got admission in Reed College without sitting into A-levels. My daughter was admitted into a 4-year course in Ethemy in UK. The website states they required A-levels or equivalents, but they were admitted on the basis of her essay and telephonic conversation. So there are 2 organizations you should watch out for. It's called International Democratic Education Council, and the second one is Indian Democratic Education Council. This is a council of parents who are either homeschooling or unschooling their children. And these are the children, I know 4 cases. There's another child who's got into LSE. This information is not with me, the child's name. This year, without any exams. That child has never written any exam. But the child had a portfolio. So the whole point of asking you this question, I don't have an answer for you. Probably you need to go back to make a policy for children who are unschooled and homeschooled. What should you be watching out? We have Professor Monan taking up a session here, and he's not a great advocate of standardized testing. And he was also saying in standardized tests, he can prove publicly that there's a negative correlation between academic capabilities and the performance. So please, folks, go back, have conversation, and find out what you need to watch out for when you get an application. Because these kids, great. They're bringing in a lot of, interesting background. But what they don't have is they don't have letter of recommendations. They don't have predicted grades. So how do you evaluate their applications? MIT asked for a profile and an interview. So she sat through her interview and profile, and she was a child who was writing Olympiads a lot. So she had international level standings in a couple of Olympiads. So please watch out for those children. Children with learning difficulties or children with special needs are also writing national, international open school. With the school I work with, we have a sister concern where all children with special learning needs are catered to. And my colleague is here attending the session this time. I brought her. Students from remote locations and students who wish to complete their education later in life. I had an office boy who was about 19 years old. He's not gone to school after grade 5. I made sure that he does his 4 years of education. That is grade 8th exam, grade 10th exam, grade 12th exam. And it was a very overwhelming experience for me by the time I moved on to move to Bangalore. That person was not child, but an adult. After leaving his education for 6 years, has moved into bachelor's preparatory program, which leads to undergrad program in IGNOU, Indira Gandhi National Open University. So what should you watch out for? English language proficiency, if the children are coming from National Open School, since they may not have written the national standardized exam in English, you may want to consider TOEFL and IELTS based on what you're. Gifted children, please watch out for gifted children. These children who feel absolutely misfit in a robust, or not a robust, but a conventional dictatorial education system, which it is. Children with learning disability and relevant needs, if you have a policy, diversity policy in terms of taking children with special needs, National Open School is where you can probably reach out. We can help you reach out to certain organizations who are doing great work there. The rigor of curriculum is not very high, so I'm not sure if they're coming from National Open School, how would you want to evaluate their test, just like MIT did, profile, just like MIT did? How would you evaluate a child's profile to take into a rigorous curriculum like mechanical engineering, or for that matter, any other curriculum? The aspirational talent pool, which seeks opportunity for growth, many of them are looking for financial aid. Again, student prepared profiles and applications. Please do not turn down an application just because a child does not have a recommendation or a predicted grade. Please ask more questions, ask for profile, have a telephonic conversation, set up an interview, and at least meet the child in person. Don't judge the child just by predicted grades, which he may not be able to produce. Thank you. Over to Ramya.
No, these three slides are going to be really quick. I think IC3 had a webinar a few months ago about the international curricula, thanks to the Sanskar Valley School and the Sanskar School and the University of Reading. And so this is taken directly from that, where they nicely summarized. This is all based on, they had done it just for UK universities, and it was, so as you can see, CBSE and so at the top is basically your A levels. So 3 A levels is more or less the equivalent of 90% in CBSE, 90% in ISE. West Bengal State Board is actually considered really rigorous, so they will settle for an 80% in that. And some of the other state boards, it varies between 90 and 93%. And in some boards like Kerala, Goa, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, it's even higher. So this is, I put it back to you because we are getting this data from you guys. So, when we open it up for discussion and questions, we would love to hear more about, whether you agree with this, because here we have a larger selection than just UK universities. I just wanted to point out that, so when we drill down a little bit more into this, again, we went back and looked just at mostly UK universities because the qualifications are more clearly mentioned, the minimum requirements and so on, whereas US is more holistic. So as you can see, it is even that generalization in the previous slide, when you drill down into it, there are a lot of variances. And this is all, like I said, taken from your university website. So I think with this, we'll just open it up. We just have one more slide, which is kind of like a summary slide. But I think we'll leave it up here. And we'll open it up for discussion because we have 10 minutes and we really want to hear from you. And ultimately, you're the one deciding kind of, when you see CBSE and ISE and State Board and hopefully NIOS soon, what do you guys think? How do you evaluate, and what is your perception of the rigor of the kind of students coming out of these boards? So with that, we'll open it up for questions. Yes, please.
Can we have a mic, please?
Yeah, and we have one over there as well.
Thanks. Paul from Tulane. So hearing a little bit about the standardization in grading in CBSE was definitely helpful, but I think for a lot of US universities who make our decisions prior to the results being released, the aspect of motivational grading and really almost an entire lack of standard in grading for a lot of what we're looking at before a student's admitted is the most difficult part in taking a student to committee for admission, or certainly offering merit scholarships if that's based on any internal rubric. So amongst any of the, I guess, more localized curricula, do you see standardization in grading before the actual exams, or kind of what light can you shed on motivational grading?
I think, again, the diversity within the ICSE and CBSE curriculum, kinds of schools is so diverse. There are schools who are legacy schools running for almost 175 years, and they haven't really changed their practices, but I know certain schools which have evolved and come much ahead of what probably an international IGCSE or IB school is doing. So as far as when you say that results are not out, but I assume that all ICSE and, I'll take your point, sir. Yes, ICSE or CBSE schools do give predicted grades. And I think over a period of time, as universities, you must have a talent, I mean like a school bank name saying XYZ school every year provides us predicted grades. And I'm aware the kind of malpractices which exist there because I want my kid to be there. So what is the deviation? I think that this is for you folks to go back and map that back into your application pool and say you're getting X application from X school. What has been the standard deviation between the predicted grade and the actual grade? Because I understand US is challenging, UK is easy because there's a conditional offer. If you don't meet the grade, you don't get the admission can be withdrawn. The admission offer can be withdrawn.
And
But
sorry.
yes.
No, one thing I
can
want to
help.
add is with CBSE, the problem arises also because there's an 80-20 split. 80% is your board exams and 20% comes from internals. Now, this goes back to the ethics of the school as well. So even though the marking schemes are very, very clear, even in that internal component, you know, out of the 20, these many marks are for your portfolio of your, whatever you do in your classwork and your notebook and subject enrichment and all these other factors. We had so many students because you know, we are sticklers for following the rules and we don't believe in just giving 20 out of 20. I'm not promoting my school. I'm just saying, and a lot of schools are very good about this, but there are a lot of schools who just say, okay, that 20 is up to us. So we're just going to give the student, every student gets 20 out of 20 on the internal component. So, you know, it is a school specific thing.
Yeah,
right?
and you can simply figure it out because in the theory out of 70, the child is getting about 40 and on
Yeah.
20, you're getting 20. So how do you establish a correlationship there? But I'm sure, I'm not sure if any university rep can add on here while I take Sir's point before.
I can add because I am a principal of CBSE school. I know how the assessment works. Grade 9 and 11, these exams are conducted by the school and schools are a little bit more strict. Grade 10 and 12 exam is external exam conducted by CBSE board. So they are a little bit more moderate, right? So if you want to see the predicted score, generally you can take the average of grade 9, 10 and 11. So whatever child is scoring in grade 11, you can add 5 to 7%. Predicted score, generally the variation is not more than 2 to 3%.
I mean, predicted grade and actual score should not vary more than 2 to 3% unless there is a setback in paper setting. Anyone from the university background who's been looking over applications over a period of time and has kind of established relationship?
Yes, just one comment about that, and that is, I think it goes back to your point of a lot of us have been working with Indian students and Indian schools for a long time and just tracking sort of internally your own, what you're seeing in terms of trends at institutions. I mean, we deal with this even with IB predicted grades, other things like that, or even A-level predicted grades, where we really kind of it is on us also to track trends from different schools because they vary widely. There's no standardization of predicted grade practices at most schools. So the schools that you're seeing a lot of applications from, I think it really is on us to keep track of what variations we're seeing in final versus predicted grades.
Yeah, that's a very important point for you folks to go. And if you're somebody new, I think it's a good idea to meet in your own community and get some intelligence from the people who've been working in that, I mean, like from university community and say, hey folks, have you worked with this school? I've got this predicted grades. How much do you go by that? And let me tell you, it's far more complicated. I don't know if I'm saying it for my cohort. It's very difficult for us to do predicted grades in terms of A levels. It's extremely easy to do predicted grades in ISC and CBSE. Because that's a percentile system. So my kid may still be doing 90, but I don't know if he's A star because the others might be doing 95, right? So here it's a fairly good system. It's a percentage system. Well, that's a very difficult system. I don't know if that answers your question. It does? Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Sure. Can I? Oh, you're also from here.
Yeah, I just one observation from your slide. In India, you said West Bengal 75%, 85 is equal to 90% of CBSE. So this is also I wonder. So what kind of rationality you can draw from that? So as a board, CBSE board, and this is because there is a moderation is happening every place. So as a fraternity of all those educational people are here, so I look strongly for these kind of gaps, how to address those gaps. So you say one state 75, CBSE 95, Some other state it is equivalent to 85. So how can you come up with that? Whether we should go rigorously behind this or something, we have to modify our system so that we can go ahead with the competitive exams, other thing. Another part is, last year IIT seats were vacant. Last year also IIT seats were vacant. Yeah. So as a council, I mean, since you are talking about admission other thing, so what exactly is direction for schools to prepare children? Whether we'll stick to that, stick to grade, stick to IIT, or something beyond we have to go for. This is my observation. Thank you.
Yeah, but also this, like I said, this is because this is taken from universities. So we want this to be, this is not a judgment we are making. This is something you guys have already made. So these are UK universities. So I call upon, I think, Queen Mary's is right here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but they're the ones, and I think Birmingham was another one which had this West Bengal and other board demarcation. And so, we would love to have a dialogue on what exactly prompted that kind of differentiation between, because for example, one of the things, my teachers saw this and they've had a lot of experience with both CBSE and A levels now, and they said, and with the Telangana State Board as well, and she said it really depends on the subject. If you look at math, Telangana State Board is really up there with with CBSE and with any other most rigorous curriculum, which prepares our students. Like a lot of students who want to go for JEE and NEET and competitive exams, they actually prefer the Telangana State Board to CBSE in our state, at least in our city. And so she said there's no way that Telangana should be grouped with the other. I would actually say a 75% in Telangana State Board math should be the equivalent of your A or whatever, A in math. So there are a lot of nuances, and we would love to hear. But
Again,
yes. And while we're waiting for that, the only thing I want to point out is very few universities have started using the positional grade. I noticed, at least in Europe when I did the research, Oxford and Cambridge are probably the only two which, when you see for CBSE, they are requiring that the positional grade be there. So, for example, the equivalent of an A star, A is 4 A1s and an A2, with a 91% in the percentage marks and the 90% for the A2. So it's taking into account both the positional grade requirement as well as the percentage grade requirement.
Hi, my name is Adam from Pomona College. I'm going to take this in a different direction. In the statistics that you gave, the 1.6 million schools and 5.5 million teachers, does that include counselors? Because I have found myself surprisingly at places that I would assume have counseling dealing with principals who don't have counselors. So can you speak a little bit to the culture of counseling in India and how that is changing?
I don't think we've gone that into the detail in terms of stratification of what comprises this 5.5 million, but that would be interesting for us to go back and look into. I've just been given a red flag. We all three are available outside. I think they have to set up a high school exhibit, so we'll have to vacate the room. I apologize for that, but we three are outside, and thank you so much. And if you need to make a connection,